Town Hall. Thank you all for coming. Hope you were able to join us for our lunch. How many of you have been out here to our Law and Learning Center before? Okay, wonderful. For those of you that haven't, we, our law firm and the Community Advocacy Network moved into this campus. It's a 6-acre campus. We teach hundreds of board members and managers here on a monthly basis. We have Bill and Susan Rappian, previously with the Ombudsman's Office, who are our teachers, along with our attorneys. We do a lot of continuing education on this campus. So for those of you after the town hall that would like to take a tour of our lending library and the Law and Learning Center, just let Julie know right here. Just want to also thank Julie Fishman. Julie Fishman is CAN's Governmental Affairs Liaison, and this entire town hall was her brainchild, so thank you, Julie. Lee, come up here. This is Lee Katzman, my partner.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. It's a very special event. We want to appreciate not all the local legislators who are up here. And thank you so much for coming. They want to speak to you and you want to hear from them, so we should have a day of discussion. So thanks so much for coming out.
So before I start introducing our panel here, how many of you already have read all 11 constitutional amendments and know how you're going to vote? Okay. And for the rest of you, you're probably like me, you don't know yet, you want to hear a little bit more about it, right?
Yeah.
Prepared. Okay. So let's get started. The first of our guests that I would like to introduce is Senator Jeremy Ring. Senator Ring was elected to the Florida Senate in 2006 and has served as the chair of the Committee on Governmental Oversight and Accountability and as vice chair on the Joint Select Committee on Collective Bargaining. Senator Ring serves on a number of boards for local not-for-profits and is the co-founder of Superb, Students United with Parents to Resolve Bullying, and a very good friend of mine. Senator Ring.
Julia, what should I do?
Stand up.
Stand up? I got what? 3 minutes? 1 minute. I got 1 minute? 3 minutes. I'll start by saying how many people here are like me and are just absolutely sick and tired of all the political advertising that's out there?
Yes. All the negative.
Yeah, enough. This election is today. Get the darn thing over with, because I can't even go to my mailbox anymore. I'm actually going to let everyone else talk about the amendments. I want to talk about another issue real quickly, and what I still think the single biggest challenge the state faces, and it's a massive challenge that everyone in this room faces, and that's the crisis we have with our property insurance. Right? Everyone realizes that's a big deal? Big deal. And, you know, let me just say the legislature has gotten it wrong year after year after year. And the reason they've got it wrong is because the legislature has two factions. They have one side that says we've got to control rates. Another side that says we've got to control risk. Okay? We don't have anyone who said we have to align the rate with the risk. That hasn't been done yet. So what we keep doing back and forth is just pushing back and forth. 1 year, we've got Governor Charlie Crist, and he's all about lowering rates. The problem with that is it puts massive amounts of risk on our backs. Governor Rick Scott says let's raise rates to create lower risk, but that creates a pretty significant social challenge that we have when we raise our rates, and increase them. So we in the legislature have got to get a lot smarter about this issue, because it's one of the biggest issues. Would you all agree it's one of the biggest issues you all face right now?
Biggest item on the budget.
Biggest item on the budget. So we've got to figure out how we align risk and rates. And if we can't do it. I mean, we happen to live in Florida, the highest risk area in the world, pretty much. But there is ways to align risk and rate instead of just splitting it down the middle and bouncing it back and forth. So we can talk about that. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I know you've got a lot of people speaking today. But if that's a conversation that you want to have a little bit later, we can. Thank you.
Okay, Representative George Moritas. Many of you know Representative Moritas in this room. He was elected to the Florida House in 2010. Representative Moritas serves on the following committees: Finance and Tax, Governmental Operations, Energy and Utilities, K through 12 education, and higher education appropriations. Representative Moritas has served as an officer in the Navy and was the 2011 recipient of Kansas Legislator of the Year Award, and we continue to work with him on community association legislation.
Thank you, Donna, and it really is a privilege to be here. It was a privilege to win the award last year, and it is a privilege to work with Donna and all of you in the association. I always say that this group really does represent the consumers, the people actually living in the units, as opposed to the special interests, and that's one of the reasons I value and solicit Donna's input on legislation. She really does play a key role in shaping policy through our office. So, first of all, say that, and next of all, I'm going to say we're going to get a condo bill passed next year. That's a promise. We had a little difficulty with the Senate this year, but we're going to get that done because there are a lot of important things. And I was just meeting with Donna about some of the important things that we're going to get passed next year. And looking forward to the discussion about the amendments. And just regardless of which party you're part of, please get out and vote and encourage others to do so. It is important for our democracy. It is a historic election. And whichever side you're on, just please get out and participate. Thank you.
Okay, you all heard that. We're going to get a condo HOA bill this year. Okay, Representative Dwight Bullard was elected to the Florida House in 2006. Representative Bullard serves as the ranking Democratic member on the Education Committee. Representative Bullard is a strong advocate for public education and has received numerous awards for his work to protect students, teachers, and our public education system. Just elected to the state. That's even, hey, even better. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you. Definitely good afternoon. A couple corrections. I'm elected no way. On my way to the states. Still, won't be on the dial. Hello, hello. Can you hear me in the back?
Yeah, that's better.
Better? Closer? To the mouth right there? All right. It's a little awkward. State Representative Dwight Bullard again, elected in 2008. Public school teacher for the last 13 years, which is really where I've cut my teeth in terms of public service, where my commitment is in terms of making education better for the school children here in the state, primarily because it's an economic catalyst for future revenues, great ideas, and industry in the state. And so, whenever I talk about education, I come from a place of trying not to lose any more intelligent people to other states. We want to make sure that if we're going to be a breeding ground for good education, we want to keep those folks here to, again, help solve the problems of the future. So that's my goal. Look forward to doing the same level of service in the Senate. My Senate district is the largest in the state, 8,000 square miles. It runs from Key West up through Collier County, taking in 4 counties, including portions of Miami-Dade. So I have Miami International Airport, Key West International Airport, Hendry County Airport, all in my district. And I have no plane, so pray for me. Thank you.
No airplane.
Okay, Representative Mark Pafford was elected to the Florida House in 2006. Representative Pafford has served as the Democratic Deputy Whip and is the ranking Democratic member of the Healthcare Appropriations Committee. Prior to being elected to the House, Representative Pafford served as legislative aide to Representative Lois Frankel and as U.S. Congressional aide to Congressman Larry Smith. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, and if you're going to hear me with that, by the time we're done, you may not want to, but it's okay. I traveled actually down from Palm Beach County, House District 88 currently, which is West Palm Beach, Century Village, Royal Palm Beach, a number of cities, including West Palm Beach. I've spent most of my time in the legislature. Actually, Dwight and I came in 2008, basically doing healthcare and anything education related. I just look over at Dwight on the floor and go yes or no. So there's some truth right there from the beginning, and I'll stop because we have many more folks. Nice to see everybody.
You're the best speaker so far.
Oh, thanks.
We can hear you.
Representative Franklin Sands. Representative Franklin Sands was elected to the Florida House in 2004. Representative Sands served as the minority leader from 2008 to 2010. Representative Sands has always been a champion of public education and will be in a runoff for the at-large seat for the Broward County School Board on Election Day. And I have had the pleasure of dealing with Representative Sands for many years. He gets these issues, he gets your issues, so thank you for being here, Representative Sands.
Thank you, Donna. And it's always a pleasure to be here because, you're the folks who really get the job done, and you interact with the people, and you have the interests of consumers at heart, and that's what we really need. We're going to be talking about different kinds of amendments today, so I'm not going to say anything about that. I've lived in Broward County with my wife for over 30 years. We're married for 32 years. We raised 7 kids, yours, mine, and ours, and we survived. Thank God everyone is gainfully employed. And, for me it's bittersweet because I'm terming out of the legislature after 8 years. And you get to meet some really exceptional people in the legislature, and some other not quite so exceptional. And we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. But it's a great pleasure to be here. Donna, thank you so much for those kind words. Okay.
Thank you, Representative Sands. I also want to take a quick moment to tell all of you, we're in a packed room here. We're packed pretty tight, huh?
Yeah.
But for our speakers, you're not just looking at the people in this room, you're looking at all the other people they represent. For instance, we've got Jim Hoppenstadt here and Ewing Sutherland. They are our 2 Can Advisory Council members. Jim, how many people in your committee? 14,000. We've got, I know Lori Vinegar is out here somewhere. Lori, this way. Lori's with Alliance of Delray. So this crowd is probably 20 times bigger, maybe more, probably more. So just wanted to point that out. We've got Mayor Frank Ortis. Mayor Frank Ortis, and it's such a pleasure meeting him today. First municipal appointment was in 1994. After 2 years as a city commissioner, he was elected mayor of the city of Pembroke Pines, Florida in 2004, and was re-elected for a second mayoral term in January 2008. In January 2012, he was elected unopposed to his 3rd term as mayor of Pembroke Pines. Mayor Frank Ortis is president-elect of the Florida League of Mayors for the 2012-2013 term. In August 2007, he was installed as president of the Florida League of Cities. He was elected president of the Broward League of Cities for the 2005-2006 term of office, and we're delighted he's here today to join us.
Hello. I represent 157,000, but you're getting close. I'm here to talk about Amendment 4, and I will just thank you. Well, thank you for that great introduction.
Mr. Howard Simon. There you are, Dr. Howard. Mr. Simon has served as the executive director of the ACLU of Florida since 1997. During his time at the ACLU, the organization has been involved in cases and controversies dealing with school vouchers, charter schools, religious practices in the public schools, abortion rights, the Terry Schiavo case, as well as physician-assisted suicide, and numerous disputes involving freedom of speech. He actually got me outside talking about political signs and community associations. We had an interesting conversation. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Simon.
Well, it's a pleasure to have been invited here. I hope for a spirited discussion. I'm not a legislator. I represent an organization whose job it is to be a watchdog of the legislature and other government agencies and try to protect civil rights and civil liberties and human rights. The only thing I want to say generically about today's program is that this may be the longest, most complicated ballot in the history of the state of Florida. So, and there are many things on the ballot that we're going to be talking about today in these 11 constitutional amendments that have the capacity to change the structure of Florida government for maybe for generations. So it is really important that everybody studies this. I really want to urge everybody to vote by mail. So get your mail ballot, or if you don't, at least make sure you study the ballot. Don't think that you're going to walk in and read these constitutional amendments for the first time and make up your mind. That'll be chaos. So this is something you really got to be prepared for. But thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. Okay, our next speaker has 2 names that I was not sure how to pronounce, so I'm going to do my best. I'm looking right at you, Tim. Tim Dornblazer,
Correct.
correct, has been a senior project manager and partner in the firm of Shaw Ager, I was going to say Ager, Shaw Ager Construction Inc. since 2006, and has been a state of Florida certified general contractor since 2005. Mr. Dornblazer has been very involved with the Associated Builders and Contractors Florida East Coast chapter and is the co-chair of the 2013-2014 PAC committee and chairman of the Grassroots Task Force Subcommittee. Thank you so much for coming and joining us.
Okay. Thank you very much, Donna. Thank you very much to Ken.
It's not on.
Thank you very much for Donna, and thank you very much to Ken for hosting this event. Thank you all for coming out here today. I am here on behalf of Associated Builders and Contractors. I'm sure most of you probably have not heard of us. We are actually a organization such as the AMA or the AARP, but for the commercial construction industry. We participate in a lot of local, state, and federal government. We have legislative affairs directors that we have at all levels of government. We do have one here locally to interact with local government on behalf of the construction industry. We are also known as the voice of commercial construction. ABC is ranked as one of the most influential organizations by a survey of Congress and a lot of the workers up in a lot of our legislatures in Congress. I am a longtime South Florida resident. I was born and raised in Boca Raton, Florida, and I've been a general contractor down here, as she said, since 2005, and I've been actively involved in the community since then. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. We may also have two other senators who are engaged in a rather heated race. Senator Sachs and Senator Bogdanoff join us later. That could be fun. We'll see what happens. Our last speaker, Erica Shanti. Ms. Shanti has been an associate at Robert M. Levy & Associates since 2007 and has been in charge of the Miami ground operations, which includes attending legislative forums and events and helping to organize the annual Miami-Dade Days in Tallahassee. Erica, welcome.
As you said, my name is Erica. I work for Robert Levy & Associates. We assist Julie in your advocacy in Tallahassee, and Bob would have been here if he could, but he's busy prepping for Tallahassee, and which made me the only female on this floor. I like that. So we work mainly in Tallahassee. We deal with your legislative priorities, and thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Great. We're going to start. Don't turn that screen yet. We're going to do a little trivia first. Okay, first question is, how many constitutions do you think the state of Florida has had?
4, he said. 5. 4.
Who said 6? And you were right. I've seen you in our classes answering questions correctly before. All right, we've got some ringers in this crowd. The state of Florida has had 6 constitutions. How many different ways can you amend the state of Florida's constitution? 5. 5 ways. Okay, now we can put on the screen. There's 5 ways to amend the Constitution. We're not going to belabor the point. The 2 most popular are by joint resolution of the Florida legislature and by citizen-driven initiative. A little bit harder for citizen-driven initiative to do it. Of all these 11 amendments, they were all put on the ballot the same way. Do you know how? By the legislature. Okay? So we're going to go ahead and get involved in the first one. Let's go to the First Amendment. Okay, Amendment 1 is healthcare services. Okay? Prohibits laws or rules that require individuals or employers to purchase health insurance. The Federal Affordable Health Care Act has been upheld by the United States Supreme Court. I guess this is Florida's answer to Obamacare, this amendment. Now we've got speaking for it, Tim. Go ahead.
Okay, the Amendment 1, the Healthcare Services Amendment, is of course in direct response to the bill passed by the federal government, and I think it's really pretty clear is meant to block the federal government's recent passing, more commonly known as Obamacare. Of course, we as an organization look at it, and I know the Supreme Court recently passed a judgment that Obamacare was known as more of a tax, and we have viewed it as such, and we are in support of this constitutional amendment because we feel it puts an undue burden on business owners, and in both terms of a tax and an increased regulation. We certainly realize that there is a drastic problem with the healthcare system here in the United States, and that there does need to be a fix, but we don't feel that the current law passed by the federal government, of course, is the fix that we need. So we are therefore in favor of this Amendment 1 that would block the implementation of Obamacare in the state of Florida. Now, I also understand that a lot of proponents would claim that the supremacy clause in the United States Constitution would probably kill off this amendment in the state of Florida if we make it null and void, even if we do pass it. But nonetheless, that's, I believe, an item for the courts to figure out.
Can't be heard.
Everybody stand.
Okay.
Stand up.
Stand up. Yeah. Stand up and put the mic really close to your
Really
mouth.
close, okay.
Yeah, and move to your right so the words don't end up on your forehead.
Is that any better? Okay.
They're like directors.
Yeah.
There, move it up. Okay, go.
Okay, Amendment 1, for those of you who didn't hear me, Amendment 1, the Healthcare Services Bill, or amendment to the state of Florida Constitution, the Associated Builders and Contractors, we as an organization and as small business owners have felt that we are in support of this amendment. We're in support of it. It is obviously in direct correlation to Obamacare that was passed, as it's known by most, by the federal government. We feel that the federal government's legislation was going to put undue taxation and undue regulation burden on business owners and on contractors.
Individuals also from the individual members.
Right, correct. So therefore, we have felt that we are not, that we are in favor of Amendment 1, which would be to prevent the implementation of the federal government's health care bill in the state of Florida. Now, some proponents of the bill have mentioned that the supremacy clause in the U.S. Constitution would prevent us from being able to stop the federal government's bill in the state of Florida. I'm not here to say whether that is truthful or not. I think we're going to leave that up to the court systems to decide. But again, we felt that it was going to place an the health care bill is going to place an undue burden on business owners and undue regulation, and therefore we are in support.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Also, did all of you see that we had questions outside, question forms, if you wanted to ask questions on any of these amendments? What we're going to do is you can write down your questions, and we will hold them till the end so we can get through all 11 amendments, okay? I guess it wasn't made clear enough that there's pencils and question forms out there. Okay, speaking against this, Amendment 1, Healthcare Services, it's Representative Franklin Sands.
Thanks, Mom. Appreciate that. Listen, let me tell you a couple. First of all, I want to tell you, I thank ABC for their support of my candidacy for the Broward County School Board, and I'd like you to know that I received a check, it's cashed, we cleared, and everything is good, so there's no refunds here. Now, I want to go on to Amendment 1. Listen, Florida is a really special place. I don't know of any other state that has 11 amendments numbered 1 through 12. 3 million. 3 million is a number you have to know. 3 million is the number of people in the state of Florida without insurance. 3 million. Now, when these folks get sick, and unfortunately a lot of them do get sick, where do they go? They go to the emergency room. And who pays for the cost of the emergency room?
Jackson Memorial.
Thank you. So the federal government has come up with a program called the Affordable Health Care Act, which will insure a very, very large number of these uninsured people. Now, the previous speaker said very correctly that some people would say that this issue is moot, and I would be one of those people, because The Supreme Court has already ruled on this. But let's understand the genesis of this amendment within the state of Florida. This amendment was proposed immediately after the affordable health care was proposed. So it was a knee-jerk reaction. You've got to understand the mentality and the spirit in the legislature in Florida. Today, it is a very mean-spirited place. If one side says yes, the other side will say no. And of course, the people in charge always win. We could win every debate, but as a Democrat, we would lose every vote. This is something that would help people. Just as Social Security helped people, just as Medicare helped people, the same folks who were against these other things before are against this now. We have to give it a chance. We have to see how it works out. Certainly have until 2014 to tweak it, to make it better. This will be something that will benefit all of the citizens of the state of Florida, certainly all the citizens of the country. And it is not for free. It is not for free. And it's not going to bankrupt anything. You know, these are all scare tactics that are being used. But irrespective, this is really a moot point because of the supremacy clause. The federal law will supersede any state law. So I would urge you on this and the other amendments, just vote no. Thank you.
We have, in addition to our panel, we have Representative Hazel Rogers, who joined us as a nice surprise. Thank you so much, Representative. You want to take a few minutes just to introduce yourself and say hello? I think you've got a mic right there.
Good afternoon. I'm Hazel Rogers, Representative-elect, District 95, Margate, Sunrise, Tamarack, Plantation, Lauderdale, Lauderdale Lakes, and the city of Oakland Park. Parts of all of those cities. It's good to be here to hear from you, and I will support what was stated by my leader when I got in the House in 2008, Franklin Saints. And I see my other colleagues to my right, to my left, been in local government since 1996. A small city, a little city, Lauderdale Lakes. That's my home city, so it's good to be here. Thank you all. And I thank all of my years in the legislature by, we love you. And we love the small businesses, but guess what? You got to take care of folks sometimes, right? Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Rogers. Okay, we're going to move on to Amendment 2, but my PowerPoint person is gone. PowerPoint person. Bill Ratman, thank you. Okay. Amendment 2, veterans disabled due to combat injury, homestead property tax discount. Do we have any veterans in the room? Round of applause. And this is not to make it hard for Representative Fuller to speak against this amendment, but okay. Speaking for this amendment, who is speaking for this amendment? Senator Ring is speaking for this amendment.
Okay. No? Okay, so related to this amendment, currently if you are living in Florida at the time, if you're living in Florida, better, at the time of enlistment, you get a homestead exemption. What this is saying, and you have been injured in combat. What this is saying is it's extending that existing statute, that existing law, and saying that if you were injured in combat and you were a Florida resident after original homestead exemption, you will get an additional exemption. I believe that's what it says, correct? Okay, so that to me sounds pretty reasonable. If you were going overseas and you're fighting for our country and you've gotten injured in combat, I think it is incumbent upon us to do as much as we can to try to help you, because imagine the costs that you face every single day, the personal costs, the financial challenges that you have. If there's anything additional the state can do, we should be doing that. So I am in complete support of this amendment.
right, now we do have, speaking against the amendment, Representative Bullard.
Now we're good. Correct? Good. Back. Again, thank you for your service, for those that are veterans. When we're dealing with bills involving property tax, understand this. Your local governments run on collected revenue from ad valorem taxes. Everyone understand the basic sort of concept? So when we talk about additional tax exemptions, what that does, in essence, is potentially hinder local governments from having the necessary revenue to solve related problems for your neighborhoods. An example being, someone who is an injured combat veteran may need van transportation services that are provided by the city. If the city does not have the means to purchase new vans, purchase gas, things of that nature, they can't offer those services. So it's almost like a catch-22. You have the exemption, but you handicap, in essence, the services that a city or local municipality can offer to you. Part of the problem with this, and a lot of these amendments, is that these are things that oftentimes will come up statutorily, or can be fixed statutorily with a sunset provision, which allows then local governments to sign on board saying that in 5 years this will sunset so that we can begin to regenerate those revenues. With it becoming a constitutional amendment during a very precarious time, as Representative Sands pointed out, where you have one party that already has a 2/3 majority and can sort of ramrod things through. That means that once it's embedded in the Constitution, you can't get it out. So that tax burden and the loss of revenue falls on those local municipalities. So think beyond the small municipalities where you may have a few disabled veterans. Think to those cities that are surrounding military bases that have disproportionate numbers of military veterans living there, exercising the homestead tax exemption, in and around Destin, around Homestead Air Force Base, around Pensacola, around the Naval Base in Key West. If you have a disproportionate number of disabled veterans living in that community, if this was to happen in and around areas in California, you can imagine the limited number of revenue that could be, or the lack of revenue that could be impacted and generated in those local municipalities. So we have to be very, very cautious about voting yes on amendments such as these, especially when, if we want to fix it, we can always pass them on later. So I would encourage you to vote no, again, on this amendment because of the fact that if we want something like this done, we always can propose as a bill. As a matter of fact, I know Representative Waldman has a plan to take action on this statutorily next session. Questions?
We're going to take the questions.
Are we taking questions from the floor or just writing them down?
Write it down. We're going to go through it. Thank you, Representative Bullard. Okay, Amendment 3, State Government Revenue Limitation. Basically, this amendment proposes replacing our existing revenue limitation with a new one based on inflation and population changes. And I know this is one that I would be in the ballot box thinking, I don't know, what the heck. Do we want to limit it? Is it a good thing? Do we not? I don't know, okay? Proponents argue that the change in formula ensures that the state's budget does not outgrow the residents' ability to pay for it. And opponents argue that with the current formula, the budget cap has never been reached, and that only one other state, the state of Colorado, has done it and then subsequently removed it. So I'm confused. Speaking for it is Representative Moritas.
We'll pause on this one. But this amendment, it's sort of a philosophical question is, if revenues start going up, and the revenues have gone up more than our population and inflation, should we allow them to go up and spend that money? And that's kind of the question. So if you feel like our government is adequately funded right now, then you would probably say yes to this amendment, because you say that if we get more money, we should perhaps reserve, put it back in education, reduce the local effort, which is what this amendment provides for. Just to say what it doesn't do, Colorado had an amendment like this, except in Colorado, the legislature could not override the limitation. So in other words, whereas this allows the legislature by a supermajority vote to decide, no, we are going to go ahead and allow revenue to go up and spend it. Colorado actually said without a constitutional amendment, you couldn't do that. And so what they found was they were hamstrung in their ability to legislate and pass a budget because of these amendments. So I would not have supported the amendment if it was that tightly written. Because there could be a natural disaster, there could be a hurricane, or something like that, where we do have to spend more money in a particular year. I realize that. I don't want to hamstring future legislatures, so I would not have supported without that override. But I do support the idea that there should be a check on it to say, if the revenues are going up more than our population inflation suggests, perhaps we should reconsider whether we really need to tax people more, or perhaps we can reduce the tax rate at that point. So that's why I support it.
Donna?
Thank you. Yes.
Excuse me, since we don't have a personal income tax in Florida, how does personal income growth get measured for something like this?
That's a great question. Do any of our panelists want to address that? It's based on, the new model's going to be based on inflation in population, not on personal income.
Why does it say personal income growth?
That's the current model.
Well, then why does that even say personal income growth?
Yeah, this is taken directly from the ballot summary. It's a great question. Write it down. Right, we will take that. Okay. Now, we've heard Representative Moraga speak for it. Do we have any panelist member that wants to talk against Amendment 3?
I will if you would join.
Okay. Representative Patrick.
Well, I'm not prepared for this, but let's give it a wing, or wing it. And you know, George, it's great seeing you. I want to thank you guys because we don't see each other very often outside of session, and frankly, I think everybody's leaving either the chamber or you know they're going to the school board. So it's great to see everybody. Listen, Amendment 3 is going to do something to the state of Florida that is going to be extremely detrimental to what we do with our revenue in terms of infrastructure. It will not only hamstring local government, but it'll add another burden for the state of Florida. We have a $70 billion budget, yet we have 100,000 seniors on wait lists, including a lot of veterans. We've got 20,000 people with disabilities who've waited upwards of 11 years for assistance because they have disabilities. This state is struggling. We've got an economy that's tanked, and we have a legislature, frankly, the leadership, they've been cowards for 16 years and had no courage whatsoever to talk about a reform that will bring revenue to the state. If we pass measures like this, we're basically kicking ourselves in the rear. It's probably one of the most asinine amendments you're going to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Patrick. If that's your idea of winging it and not being prepared, I want to see you speak on something you're prepared about. It's very impressive. Okay, Amendment 4. Amendment 4 is property tax limitations, property value decline. Representative Moraga is speaking for this amendment.
So one of the things that's, and I tell this to my colleagues in the delegation, who are basically all Democrats except for myself, I say one of the nice things of being the majority party is that you win every vote whether you want to or not in Tallahassee. This amendment, I'm going to speak, I would say rather than speaking for, I'm going to sort of explain what it does. You can then make an informed decision about what you want to do. Basically, Amendment 4 tries to, and I would say the good intention of it would be that it tries to address some of the inequities in our current property tax code, which Save Our Homes has really brought about. And as you know, what Save Our Homes does, regardless of your age or your income, you basically get your property tax are essentially established when you buy the home. It can only go up 3% or by inflation every year, regardless of what your property values have done. So that, because of that, what that's done is that has shifted the burden to non-homestead owners and businesses, because they don't have these protections. So what this is trying to do is to say, well, let's give non-homestead owners and businesses a 5% increase instead of a 10% which they currently have. So that would have the effect of, obviously, less revenue coming from that side of the fence. See, what does that mean? Does that mean that you get less revenue around the government? No, it doesn't mean that. It means that the governments will likely respond by increasing millage rates to compensate for that. Because obviously the tasks have to get done. And what I tell people as a legislator is I didn't go to Tallahassee to cut local government's taxes. I get accused of voting a lot of times with local governments on things. But I don't feel that that's my job to cut local government's taxes. If they want to do that, the mayor and the commission want to do that, that's great. I didn't run for that office, but we do try to cut our taxes in Tallahassee. I think that's more appropriate for as a legislature. It would also give new home buyers that are coming into this, a new home buyer defines you haven't bought a home in 3 years, would get a very substantial property tax deduction, which would phase out over 5 years. And the idea there is it's supposed to stimulate home purchases. Again, trying to address some of the inequities created by Save Our Homes. This would again have the effect of probably increasing millage rates on everybody who doesn't have this big benefit. So again, it's not a question of having the money, it's a question of who's going to pay for it. And I do feel that if you vote for this, you're really saying, if you're a homeowner, that you're prepared to pay more to take some of the burden off of business and non-homestead property. That's basically what it does. And again, I think it's well-intentioned. Personally, what I would support, it'd be more comprehensive, might be politically more difficult, but I think the right thing to do really would be everybody that's similarly situated should pay similar taxes. I had a colleague in the legislature say, tax policy should be something you can write on the back of a napkin. It shouldn't be something that takes 20 minutes to explain what you're doing. And I think where we are with Save Our Homes and some of these responses to it, we've gotten very, very complicated. So, with the property values down, this might be the time to sort of revisit Save Our Homes for people who are not seniors. In other words, if you're not over 65, you sort of haven't retired and sort of become dependent upon a fixed income, maybe for you, we would keep that because those people have made a lifestyle choice based upon their income. But everyone else, really, as property values go up and down, and as their incomes go up and down, I just feel that this amendment has had sort of the effect of creating people that pay half and sometimes a third of property tax next door to somebody who's just recently moved in. I don't feel that's fair. So I'd like to see a more comprehensive change. I don't know politically if we could achieve that, but this is well-intentioned. Again, I'm not going to say I necessarily support it. I'm just going to say that's what it does. And appreciate the opportunity to speak on it. Representative Pavitt's a tough debater, so I hope he's not speaking. I can't.
No, Representative Pavitt's not winging it again. We actually have Mayor Ortiz speaking against it. Mayor.
Good afternoon. I was the chair of the board at Broward Community College. A professor told me one time, take 2 seconds before you speak. You relax yourself and you relax the crowd. Are you relaxed? Didn't work. Thank you very much. I like this crowd already. Let me just say I want to recognize Evelyn Pearl, Pembroke Pines, Centuryville. There's another Centuryville all the way out west, big one. I want to recognize you. And I want to recognize your son, Howard, for coming back from Iraq, great Iraqi veteran. So, and your husband, congratulations. Representative Moritas just got an award from the League of Cities because of their compassion for local government. As you know, I'm the mayor of Pembroke Pines. I'm in office 17 years. Our city is 157,000 people. Second largest city in the county, with the 10th largest in the state. Representative Arnett just says what I want to tell you. Now I can't, by laws, advocate, but I can certainly try to educate. Last night, I filled out my ballot at my desk at home. It took me 24 to 25 minutes. I read every word. Now, local government can only make a ballot initiative of 75 words. But the legislature can make a ballot initiative of 400 words. And when I read Amendment 4 14 times, I couldn't figure what the hell it was. Now, let me just give you a prepared remark. They claim that Amendment 4 will somehow spur real estate sales, and my wife is a top producer. Representative, you're a realtor, you know my wife. She doesn't like you right now. I love you.
I didn't vote for it.
Okay. Anyway, she's a realtor, top producer. That will somehow spur real estate sales and modest job growth. Representative talked about, Save Our Homes. We, the Florida League of Cities, said Save Our Homes is not a good amendment. It will hurt us in 15 years. You know what? It hurt us in 10 years. When the recapture rule was when property taxes went down and people got their taxes raised, wasn't local government. They had to go back to the maximum 3%. We said it was bad. They wouldn't listen to us at local government. Now, I recall when the promise of Amendment 1 was exactly the same. Yet we suffered a housing bubble calamity, and Amendment 1 did nothing to slow that down. But Amendment 4 is worse, because it is also unfair to longtime Florida residents and to businesses that want to grow. Are you going to buy a home in the next 3 years? No. Are you going to buy a home in the next 3 years? First-time home buyer. Somebody next to you might. You know what? Their property tax is going to go down by 5 to 10. But you're not going to have any reduction. Is that fair to have the same services from your city? Absolutely unfair. Now, the complicated tax scheme, it has more than a half dozen intricate components that are confined to anyone but tax policy experts, probably Howard Simon knows it. I just don't know. Proposed in Amendment 4 will penalize growing Florida business-based businesses and discourage new or expanding ones from coming to our community. That kind of tax policy is not only unfair, it makes no sense in this current climate. We should be trying to find ways to attract new businesses to the Sunshine State. I just opened up a bagel bar in Pembroke Pines. It's called the Mayor's Cafe. I employ 19 people. I have done my part. And you know what? I love the Affordable Health Care Act. It didn't hurt me at all. Now, we should be trying to find ways to attract new businesses to the Sunshine State. As a result, Amendment 4 actually punishes growth and expansion of local businesses. I have put a lot of my own money into my business because I couldn't get the money. When I see banks being built every day around the corners, never see a banks going up like crazy. Not them. But I couldn't get any of their money. Thank God I have my own. They said you have to have a business open 2 years. I said, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm happy I'm a mayor. He says, got to be open 2 years, can't help you. Okay. Beyond being a detriment to growing businesses, Amendment 4 is also misguided in that it hurts local residents by giving a special and unfair tax advantage to out-of-state and second home property owners, as well as those who own large tracts of vacant land. I, for one, do not like the idea of pitting one business against another, but creating a tax system that gives special favors to out-of-state property owners or those who live and work, and yes, pay taxes, right here in Broward County. Finally, Amendment 4 further complicates our already confusing and confounding, and you said it, Representative, confounding property tax system that makes the problem of unfairness even worse. In Florida, we already have a situation where neighbors with identical properties, just like I told you, often pay different taxes, even though the properties have the same exact value. Amendment 4 adds another layer of complexity to this crazy system, making this situation even worse. If Amendment 4 passes, identical properties will pay different taxes, not because their properties have different values, but because of who owns the property. In an obvious scenario, a Florida-based resident or business will end up paying more in property taxes than his or her neighbor simply because he or she lives and works in Florida. Why on earth would we want to penalize our own neighbors? The amendment is bad for our state, bad for our residents, and it's bad for our cities. As someone who has worked hard to keep property taxes in our community low, and Representative, you said that, we haven't raised millage rate in 3 years. But when you call us as your city elected official and say, I just had a am I done? I'm gonna done it. But when you call me as your elected official and say there's a foreclosed home, I'm first have to find out who owns the property, because you said it's blighted, it's got a green pool that's overflowing, and it's got grass. I have to go ahead and do that as a city official with the taxes that we have. Don't take that away from me. Don't let us have less revenue to do the things we want. Well, I could talk about another hour, but I'm not going to.
Now, I know you weren't winning that. Redirect? You're standing there. All right. Well, thank you so much. And you know, they say the way to get a loan is to convince someone you don't need money. All right? Okay, Amendment 5. Before we get into Amendment 5, raise your hand if you would like a question slip for the end for us to collect, and JC will come and hand you out a slip, okay?
I'd like to congratulate the mayor on his word to the president.
Absolutely. Congratulations, Mayor. Amendment 5, State Courts. I think we have a few lawyers in this room, and I'm sure we'll be getting some questions on this amendment. Requires Florida Senate confirmation of Florida Supreme Court justices. Currently, the legislature may repeal court rules by a 2/3 majority. This amendment would reduce that to a majority vote. Directs the Judicial Qualifications Commission to make its files available to the Florida Speaker of the House. Many people see this as an assault on the judiciary, but we'll hear. So speaking for the amendment is Erica Shanti. Erica?
Okay. I'm going to educate you all.
Speak into the mic.
Okay, can you guys hear me? Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, great. This amendment attempts to put proper checks and balances within the court system by placing the people in greater control of their judges through their elected representatives. A yes on Amendment 5 would do the following. It would require the Florida Senate to confirm or reject a gubernatorial appointment to the state Supreme Court. Many states use this process as well as the federal government. It is designed to give the people a say in their Supreme Court appointments through legislative review. It would help ensure a better reflection of the values of the voters rather than the whim of one person, the governor. It would allow the legislature to repeal statewide judicial rules adopted by the Supreme Court by a simple majority vote instead of a 2/3 vote. We believe this provision could be seen as a violation of separation of powers, and this would bring about multiple lawsuits at the taxpayers' expense. The way it is currently. It would also expand the ability of the State House of Representatives to review confidential files about judges, even if they are not being considered for impeachment. This is an aspect of the model of checks and balances that is in place in our United States Constitution. This will allow the elected representatives of the people to better police the activity of elected and appointed judges.
All right, thank you, Erica. Speaking against this amendment is Howard Simon with the ACLU.
Well, let me first say that I am not now, nor have I ever been a lawyer. So, again, I represent a citizens watchdog organization trying to protect our democracy. The ballot summary, and I use that word in quotes, of Amendment 5 is 600 words. On that basis alone, I think it's an embarrassment that this is on the ballot. There are a lot of, as you'll see by the time we get to the end of this program, there are a lot of bad proposals on the constitutional amendments. This one is half-baked and dangerous. It is the legislature's power grab to try to get control over the courts. Now, I want to say a little bit about the history and the origin of this, because I don't mean to personalize this or make this ad hominem. But if you know something about where this came from, you'll be able to put it in perspective and understand why this is so half-baked and dangerous. The Speaker of the House, the former Speaker of the House, proposed several constitutional amendments. One of them dealt with redistricting. You remember that was on the ballot 2 years ago. He went to the Supreme Court to personally argue that this should appear on the ballot. The Supreme Court's job is to restrict things from the ballot if they are misleading or inaccurate. And the Supreme Court struck that from the ballot. The Supreme Court also struck from the ballot what is now Amendment 1 here on the ballot, the legislature's symbolic opposition to Obamacare. Now you'll notice that it's back on the ballot. The Supreme Court did its job, the system worked, the legislature rewrote it a little bit, and now it's back on the ballot. But the Speaker of the House had a temper tantrum. Now this may look like a constitutional amendment, but I have to tell you, I wasn't there, but there are members of the legislature who are here, and asked them, in their private moments, to tell you what really happened. He had a temper tantrum. And so what he proposed was, let's break up the Supreme Court. Let's make it into 2 different Supreme Courts. That way the governor will get 3 new appointments and so on and so on. Well, that didn't fly in the Florida Senate. This is the remnant of that proposal by which the legislature grabs control over the Supreme Court and over the appellate courts by writing the rules for the courts and playing a role in the judicial selection and judicial nomination process. This is a very dangerous idea. It is a proposal to fix something that was broken and fixed 40 years ago. We had years and decades of corruption in the judicial selection system in Florida. So what we put in place was an improvement on the federal system. We have a judicial qualification system. The governor appoints people, the Florida bar appoints people, they both appoint other people, and they come up with nominees based on merit, not on politics. Why we would want to drag in politics into the selection process for judges is probably one of the worst ideas possible. The people who support this, and I've debated the Speaker, the former Majority Leader of the House, said, as was just said, this will make the judges accountable to the people. Judges are accountable to the people. Every 6 years they run in a retention election. They are more accountable in a retention election when they stand and run on their record. They are accountable to the people. This proposal, they're lying to you. This doesn't make the judges accountable to the people. It makes the judges accountable to the legislature. Our whole system of democracy rests on 3 co-equal branches of government: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. When you put the legislative in charge of the judicial, selecting the judges, approving the judges, writing the rules for the courts, we have weakened the basis of our democracy in this country. And that's why I say this is one of the amendments that is going to have profound effect for generations. And it elevates the judiciary over the legislature, weakens the checks and balances, and endangers the human rights that we all have that depend upon an independent judiciary.
Thank you, Howard. Amendment 6 is probably the most controversial amendment we're going to talk about today. It is going to prohibit public funding of abortion, narrows the scope of Florida's right to privacy. I don't know that we have anyone speaking for this amendment on this panel. Do we have anyone speaking for this amendment? Representative Pafford is going to wing it again. Speaking against it. Sorry, let me clarify.
Surprise! I could probably do it, but...
He's going to wing it on the pro, and he's prepared on the against.
Yeah, well, we're going to stick with the against. That's kind of funny. So I get 10 minutes now. I'll keep it short. Look, if you look at all 11 of these ballot amendments, they're taxes, religion, and abortion. 3 issues you generally don't talk about over the kitchen table. You're told not to talk about these things amongst family, but oddly enough, they end up on the ballot. Oddly enough, they end up on the ballot, and 11 of those amendments, all the 11 amendments, have been offered by the legislature, which we covered. Amendment 6, let's just do this. The women in the crowd. We may get some yeses enough. God forbid you are pregnant, you're diagnosed with cancer. God forbid there is some sort of problem with the fetus, and you're told because of the genetic issue, a severe abnormality, that you will need to terminate your pregnancy. I'd like the women in the audience to raise your hand and just let me know by raising your hand that you would call me for a second opinion. You already know my behavior, but I want to make a point. In my role as a legislator, it's even worse, yeah. The only purpose for this amendment is to create a major privacy issue and to remove a woman's ability to make a decision about her own health care. It's a woman's decision, it's her family's decision, and her doctor's decision. This has major consequences for women. But, you know, oddly enough, Amendment 1 dealt with mandates. And I'm thinking about this. The hypocrisy here is incredible. We've got Amendment 1 saying, look, don't mandate. Yet we've got Amendment 6 that says, you know what, we're going to mandate. We're not only going to mandate for the women in the state, but even more incredulous, we're going to mandate that the businesses that offer insurance are going to be told what type of service they're going to provide for women, and basically mandate the type of service. You don't hear about that in Florida. Basically, we want to deregulate. So my point is this. You've got 11 amendments. All of them are geared to charge and motivate the right wing to come out for Republican candidates. There's no other reason really to do this, especially when you're offering it to the Constitution and you're offering an idea to remove somebody's right to make a decision about themselves. You don't see that very often with amendments. So since I am the only person, we need to move it. I'm going to...
We have someone else.
Oh, we have somebody else. Okay. So we're going to switch and we're going to go, I'm assuming, to a different side of the argument. No. No? No. Okay, good. Then fine, fly away. Thank you.
Mr. Pafford, you're addressing the women here, and I want to make a point.
No, ma'am, sorry. We're not taking questions
You
right now.
took one. You took a statement from the lady with the pink shirt. It says public funding. No public funding. You want abortion?
Ma'am,
Write
it down. Write it down, then throw it out.
I'll write it down and you can show it.
Okay, good afternoon again. I'm not the only woman on this panel, but I would be remiss as a legislator because when we debated this issue, we asked the guys to stay out of this as ladies we could handle it. Okay? So I just wanted to thank Mark, as always. You have our back. He's my batchmate. We are on the same road.
I'm one of the strongest women.
Yeah, believe me, that's how he has our back. All right, but I just want you to know, and I'm just speaking as a woman, and to the ladies in the house. If I work for you, and you provide insurance for all of us, I don't believe you have the right to tell me that if I am raped, okay, although I might not be able to sustain myself and not get pregnant, okay, there's something that flows that stops me from getting pregnant, that the insurance should not be used. After I discussed this with my husband of 38 years, okay, and my family and my doctor. That is what we're against, okay? You cannot set two different set of policies for folk, all right? I work the same job, I labor the same way, but something happened and I have to make that choice, and it's between me, my spouse, my family, my doctor, my conscience, and my creator, my God. And that is my position as a woman on this issue. I say vote no.
Thank you.
So we know who she is?
This was Representative Hazel Rogers.
Thank you.
Representative Hazel Rogers. I would like to thank everyone who's sitting on this panel because you're speaking from the heart. You know, some of these amendments are less controversial than others. I do want to thank you. I want to remind everyone to be respectful. We don't need statements. We will take questions at the end. We're here to educate. We're here to educate and help you make the decision you want to make in the ballot box. It's your decision. This is just an educational forum. Now we're jumping to Amendment 8. Can anyone tell me why there's not an Amendment 7?
Yeah. The language is confusing.
because we challenged it in court, and the judge ruled that it was misleading and removed it from the ballot. And then it was rewritten by the Attorney General, so what was 7 is, in a slightly amended form, 8.
Thank you, thank you. Amendment 8, religious freedom. Oh boy, this is going to be controversial too, I'm sure. These are the two biggies. Removes the current prohibition in Florida's Constitution that prevents religious institutions from receiving taxpayer funding. I don't have anyone listed as a for, but Mr. Simon, you are listed as an against.
7 was rewritten as 8.
Well, I have to say I feel very strongly about this. I've been in this movement for about 40 years as the head of 2 state branches of the American Civil Liberties Union in the state of Michigan and now 15 years in the state of Florida. I am really discouraged and disappointed by this amendment being on the ballot, because I think if you haven't heard already, you probably will hear, I think, terrible irresponsibility on the part of the proponents of this measure in 2 different respects. First of all, this measure rests on a whole bunch of lies, I have to tell you. And one of the lies is that the proponents are fomenting religious divisiveness by telling people that they are victims of religious discrimination. And that's why this 125-year provision that has been in the Florida Constitution for 125 years has to be removed, because you have been a victim of discrimination as a result of it, even though there's not a shred of evidence of that whatsoever. The fomenting of the notion that people are victimized by discrimination. And then secondly, God forbid, if this amendment should pass, the religious divisiveness that will occur as a result of religious groups competing for a limited pot of state funding. As I said, I want to emphasize this, it is built on a whole mountain of lies. First of all, it's called the Religious Freedom Amendment. It has nothing to do with religious freedom. If it were honest, it would be called a Religious Funding Amendment. It's about money. It's not about freedom. It's about the government funding whatever religious group it wants to fund. Some people think that it is about vouchers.
It is.
And I want to say it is about vouchers, but it's about more than vouchers, because you have to look at, and you know what's missing from there is that the amendment proposes to remove a 125-year sentence from the Florida Constitution. No money shall be allocated from the Treasury, directly or indirectly, to the support and benefit of any church or sectarian institution. But more significantly, it's what they propose to add in place of that sentence. And that's what's missing from up there. It is that the sentence that says, no person or entity, undefined what entity is, shall be denied any public benefit based on religion. It creates a constitutional entitlement of a religious organization or a person to get government funding. So some people think it'll open the door to vouchers again, and it will. But let me tell you, it now goes far beyond vouchers. And not to make this too theoretical and too legalistic, let me give you an example of what it's all about. Our organization is involved in a federal case in Boston in which the federal judge has ruled for us so far. In the year 2000, Congress passed a Victims of Human Trafficking bill, in which the government gives out grants to organizations to address the needs of women who are victims of human trafficking. One of the grants deals with providing for the reproductive health and the health conditions and care of women who have been victims of human trafficking. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, which is largely behind this amendment, got one of those grants. They took the grant and then they say, oh, but on the basis of our religious freedom, we have a right to get the money, but not provide that part of the service that involves referral to contraception or the provision of contraception. That would violate our religious freedom. We have a right to get the grant, but we have a right not to perform the conditions of the grant. That would be a base. The federal judge didn't buy that, and the federal judge says, if you don't want to perform the terms of the contract, don't apply for the contract. And you have a right to have your own practice. But as in America for over 200 years, religious-based programs are funded by parishioners who dip into their pockets and fund religious programs. That's what largely this is about. It is about trying to get government funding for religious schools and religious programs. And what's really sad about this, and I think you'll hear more about this in the remaining 25 days, is how much of this is built on lies. The biggest lie that you'll hear, I think, is that this provision of the Constitution, and again, it's been in there for 125 years, puts us in a situation in which this is a scare tactic that's being used. Religious charities are at risk of being shut down at any moment. That anybody can go to court using this constitutional provision, and hospitals and schools and clinics and adult foster care facilities. This was what's said to the legislature, and the legislature put this on the ballot by a heartbreaking just 2 votes in the state Senate. That's what they're being told. And this is all based upon a lawsuit that is currently pending in the state of Florida, in which I want to read you the sentence from that court decision. The court ruled, nothing in the Florida no-aid provision would create a constitutional ban to state aid to a nonprofit institution that was not itself sectarian, even if the institution is affiliated with a religious order or religious organization. In other words, the case that they're telling you threatens the existence of religiously affiliated charities stands for exactly the opposite of what they're saying. There is no threat to religiously affiliated charities based on the rulings of the court. What they want is government money to be able to engage not only in the social service work of religious charities, all of which is valuable, Jewish vocational services, Catholic adoption agencies, so on and so on. We need all of that. What they want is the money to do that and to proselytize as well.
Howard,
And
thank you.
that is what is impermissible.
Thank you, Howard. Okay, we have a 4. Representative Moritas.
Thank you, very eloquent. I hesitate to talk on topics like this because likely they're not going to change anybody's mind about it. People have very strongly held values about them, and I respect that. Just like I respect the views on abortion that are expressed. I differ from those, but that's everybody's right to have those views and vote that. As far as religious freedom, these amendments, the language in the Constitution really does come from, as Mr. Simon said, from the 1800s and sort of a lot of anti-Catholic fervor in the country. So, as he said, these cases have in some ways eroded the effect of what we have in our Constitution, but I still think as a people, we don't want to have things in the Constitution that don't express who we are. For many of us, we are people of faith, and we do acknowledge the role of faith-based institutions in our society. As far as the vouchers and those sorts of things, this language can be used to challenge vouchers. It has been used to do that. I personally feel that if the nonprofit, even if it's a religious institution, is doing a public purpose such as education, then they should be entitled to some of this money. Of course, you need to be careful with that, but I still feel that and that's not just my thoughts, that's the President of the United States feels that way. I mean, we have lots of programs in this country that funnel money to Salvation Army, different religious institutions that do a public purpose. I disagree that it is used for proselytizing, obviously. It shouldn't be used for that. I would be the first one to say that. I don't want to see the state take over a church or make a state church, but that's not what this is saying. This is just saying that if there's a public purpose that's being done by a religious institution, that the fact that they're a religious institution should not disqualify them from being available to provide that service. Many times it's being done to save taxpayers money because they're doing it less expensively because they do have charitable dollars coming in to supplement what the government's doing. So that's why I support it. Again, I respect the opinions of those who differ with me, but that's why I support it. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Moritas. Well, I'm delighted to tell you that one of our other guests just showed up. Senator Sachs, Senator Maria Sachs. Yes, right here. Okay, so Senator Sachs, as you know, it's 3 weeks till election time, so we are very, very grateful for every legislator who could be here today. Senator Sachs, you came at a great time to pass the 2 of the most controversial amendments. Got a little excitement going on here, but if you could take a few minutes and just introduce yourselves.
Thank you, Donna Berger. What she does is amazing in this law firm too. Let's all hear it for Donna Berger. I've known this young lady for a number of years. I feel like she's my daughter almost, you know. So beautifully. Just got here in my limousine. Just parked right outside. You know. And I'm so happy that we finally got here. My driver and I. My name is Maria Sachs, S-A-C-H-S. I'm a state senator from District 30, and I am a candidate for District 34, which encompasses 2/3 of Palm Beach, a little bit into Broward County. Is there anybody, so we're in Broward, is there anybody here that would live in the new district, which is pretty much east and coastal areas of Broward County? If you don't, you gotta move. Come on over in the new district, lovely over here. I look forward to answering any questions and arguing on these issues. I think I have Amendment 3.
You know what, we passed it, but why don't you go ahead and give your thoughts. We spoke about Amendment 3. Actually, can you go back and just throw up that slide again? That was the state government revenue limitation. And we love to see Senator Sachs has to say about this.
I kind of chose this one because I think that it's probably one of the most dangerous. You ever hear the expression when something is too good? It probably is. When I saw this for the first time, I said, wow, what a great idea. Wouldn't this be wonderful that we could limit government and keep it within certain standards of population and inflation? I'm an attorney for 32 years. I have a small practice. I know that you need to read it 2 or 3, maybe 4 times, or 14 times. It sounds great. It's got a great name, Taxpayers' Bill of Rights. I like that already. But I don't like what it does. And this is the reason. It's been tried and failed in many states. You know what state has adopted this. Let me hear you say it. Colorado. You're an educated group. Colorado is trying to get rid of it. I checked. I called them up. One good thing about being a senator is that people actually take your calls. They're scared. Maybe they're in trouble, you know, so they take your call. I said, how do you guys like it out there? They said, are you kidding? We're trying to get rid of it. Let's not forget, this would not be a law that would be passed by the legislatures. Okay? We legislators, we pass laws all the time. And then the other folks come in and they get rid of them. Then we start all over again, get back up there, pass them again. This would not be a law that would be passed by the legislature. This would be a constitutional amendment. And you all remember what it takes to pass a constitutional amendment is not 50 or 51%. How much is it? 60. That's right. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. I'm just going to give you my opinion on it, and you keep your opinion, and if you have any questions, let me know. Once this goes in as a constitutional amendment, it'll take a long time to get it out. Now, you have to trust your legislators. Don't trust what you see on TV. I know. I wonder about that too. Not the only thing that I think folks can trust today, because I don't trust the newspapers. I don't really trust everything. I don't trust much I see on TV. Is go to websites. Go to our personal websites. Go to the Senate website. See what the person has done, not what they say. Anyway, this is not a good thing for the state of Florida, and I'll tell you why. We're not a business-oriented state, necessarily. Florida has become one of the top states in the country, not because of our manufacturing, not because of our industry, but because of our beautiful beaches, because of our resorts, because people come here, like I did from Michigan, come here to retire. And when we do, we love to age here because it's so beautiful. That's why we need services. That's why we need services. And we need good services, but we don't have an income tax. So how do you provide services if you don't have an income tax? Well, you've got to be able to tax certain things that people like to do. Not too much, because you don't want to lose it. Now you notice, and I've been against taxes, I'm a small business owner. I'm the one that signs the check at the end of the week, like today. If I didn't bring in enough this week, my secretary doesn't get a check. She gets fed first before me. That's the way it is. So I'm very fussy when it comes to taxes. And we haven't raised taxes. What we have raised, a little bit, is fees. You know it. You see it, and when you go get your driver's license, you go, what? Didn't I pay $57 last year for this old car? You know. So we have to be careful, but we do have to raise those fees a little bit so that we can provide for services for our people. Our people meaning us. I'm getting older too. We need transportation. And we need services for all of us. And we need schools. If anybody in here thinks that we can get a fine company, a corporation, high-tech corporation, to come to our state, and we are so far below in public education, you're kidding yourself. You're kidding yourself. And I'm a moderate Democrat, but I know that if you want to have a good, strong state, you need a good public education system. And we are woefully inadequate. I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican, we need to take care of our public schools, not only for us, but for our children, but to provide for other companies to come in here and say, Florida is where I want to raise my kids. We need young families here. And we need our public education to come even higher than it has been. That's another thing I don't want you to believe in TV. Ain't no Democrat that's going to cut public education anyways, you know that. So that's nonsense. But we need to fund public education. And so all of that, if we enacted this year, we would be $111 billion in shortfall. $111 billion. Now, where am I getting these figures? The Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, a nonpartisan economic group that studied what would happen if Florida went on this table policy. So it's something that this is an educated group. This is my opinion. This is my opinion. I've studied it. I want you to study it. I want you to study it. Because I have a feeling you are. You're an educated group. If Colorado is so anxious to get out of this, and if it would take Florida a hard, difficult referendum to get out of it, this is not something for us. We're not the state of Michigan. We're not New Jersey. And even if we were, this is not a good thing. It's especially not good for us because we do need to provide for services. I want to thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Sachs. You made one point, very interesting. Senator Sachs referenced laws going back and forth. Does that remind anybody of your communities?
Oh, yeah.
Change your documents 1 year, new board gets in, changes again, happens everywhere. Okay, we're going to go to Amendment 9. Homestead property tax exemption for surviving spouse of a military veteran or first responder. This is somewhat similar to the other one. We've got Representative Bullard speaking against this. Representative Bullard?
Again, good afternoon, folks. Short and sweet, it's similar to the last one when we start capturing the revenue that local governments are taking in. Even though this affects which most of us would consider a very, very small subgroup. Again, this is one where the group in question never petitioned the legislature to pass this. This wasn't a necessity. It wasn't like there were grassroots groups coming up and advocating for this. It simply is too much of a prohibition to add to the Constitution to cap revenue to local governments to invite this. If it's something that needs to be addressed, it can be addressed statutorily. And if there was a push for it, I'm sure your representatives and senators would be very open to, again, putting a provision in state law with a sunset provision. But remember, constitutional amendments, no sunset provision. So that's short and to the point.
Great, thank you. And speaking for it is Erica Chonky.
Okay, short and sweet. I'm going to give you a couple bullet points on what this would vote yes would provide. It would grant full homestead property tax relief to the surviving spouses of first responders who die in the line of duty. It would enshrine in the state constitution a law that currently offers full property tax relief to surviving spouses of veterans who die while on active duty. And it also would allow spouses whose partners died before the passage of this amendment to be eligible for the tax exemption. Yes. Okay.
That was short and sweet. Okay. Amendment 10. Tangible personal property tax exemption. Proponents argue that the amendment will give tax relief to small businesses and help stimulate the economy. Opponents argue that trickle-down economics doesn't work, and this amendment will put an additional strain on local governments trying to provide services to their residents. Tim, I'm guessing what you're going to say. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Yes, this amendment will currently double the tangible property tax, the tangible personal property exemption from $25,000 to $50,000. Some examples of the tangible personal property are things for business such as machinery, office equipment, furniture, things of those natures. A few other items out there, though, that are exempt already are household goods, motor vehicles, boats, airplanes are all currently already exempt from this tax. This bill actually passed the Florida House 112 to 2 and passed the Florida State Senate unanimously, with all 40 votes. So, we do have bipartisan support on that. The University of Florida put out a study in a publication earlier this year that tangible tax collects approximately $1.8 billion a year in the state of Florida. This exemption is only expected to reduce that by 1.2%. So we're looking at only reducing it down to $1.78 billion. So I don't think we're looking at a massive reduction in income there to the state. However, the helping hand to small businesses that could use a help during these tough economic times, I think would be well worth it. Plus the additional assistance to the state of Florida in making us more viable for additional businesses to move to South Florida and more people to open a small business in Florida. I think is well worth the yes on this amendment.
Right. Now, we've got some great questions coming up, and I've been told we need a bathroom break, and Mayor Ortiz is against this amendment. So, we've got two choices. Mayor, you can be brief, or we can take a break and then hear what you have to say. Okay.
Thank you. I will be brief. A couple went to breakfast in 58 years of marriage. They're eating Lucky Charms. And she turns to the man, she says, I don't want to be married to you anymore. Get out, you made me, just get out. So as he's leaving, and she says, may all your days be miserable for the rest of your life. She says, now you want me to stay? These are what I think of some of these constitutional amendments. But I'm going to be brief. As I said, let me just read what the Miami Herald says about Amendment 10. This raises the exemption involving tangible property personal taxes applied to businesses from 25 to 50,000, subject to city and county approval. Law proposes this may be the most worthwhile, but it's another piecemeal attempt to eat into revenues, being an unnecessary amendment to the Constitution. The Herald says vote no. Let me just quickly say, the city of Pembroke Pines, you know you get $50,000 in exemptions now. By the state, you got an additional 25. I passed, and I initiated my city, for those seniors that had just a gross income of $22,000, below that income, another $25,000. That's $75,000. And then the county passed an exemption. Folks, somebody's got to pay taxes. You want your cities to be beautiful? I have a tough graffiti law in the city of Pembroke Pines, but it takes money to eradicate. We can't continue to take revenue. Simply all I'm going to say. I'm ready for battle.
Thank you so much. Okay, let's thank Mayor Orvis.
All right, this is I wouldn't say a complicated one. Only the reason I say it's a little, we get a little disillusioned about this is because the way it's crafted, it seems very straightforward. Tax exemption for seniors. We already had that in statute. So when we embed this again in the Constitution, it's something that is going to be almost ironclad for the next, who knows how long, before you can carve it out. So understand this, and understand that, especially for my friends in the Democratic caucus, and my colleagues in the Democratic caucus, we are rarely, the opportunity for us to vote on something that's going to be harmful or detrimental to seniors is a vote we would never take. And so statutorily, when things like that come up, we're always going to vote in favor of the communities in which we represent and the seniors in which we all know. Again, with this one, once this goes in here, not only does it affect local governments, but you have to think, if you live in a senior community within another city, imagine the depression of revenue to that city because of the disproportionate number of seniors that live there. So that almost creates, if you will, a chasm of haves and have-nots in terms of the functionality of local government. For those cities that have people 25 to 45 that are buying property, you're going to see their revenues uptick. You're going to see their upkeep of their neighborhoods, their parks, etc. For those that don't, or have folks that are, fall into this that are applicable, you're going to see a loss of services. And I think we all understand the importance of maintaining, or at least trying to maintain service, whether it's fire, police, garbage pickup, and what have you. So again, as hard as some of the language is to vote no on, I'm encouraging everyone to vote no on these property tax amendments because we deal with these as they come. We deal with these time and time again in the part of the legislature in which if we know that our seniors need alleviation from the tax burden, we're going to vote for it. However, in a time like this where we need all hands on deck, the idea that we're getting exemptions from those who are doing well off could be detrimental again to local government. So I would encourage you to vote no on this amendment as well.
Thank you, Representative Berger. With our dwindling ranks, I'm now in a comfy chair. I was on a plastic chair before, so that's the upside. Representative Katzman's going to speak on this amendment as well.
Thank you, and I felt bad that Dwight's doing the heavy lifting. So here's what I want to do, because we in Tallahassee like to trick you. It should be no surprise, but we do it in a very complex way. We go up there, we cut taxes, and we come back and say we balance the budget. We didn't get rid of the programs, but here's the trick. And if you don't think you understand budgeting, hopefully this will help. I want everybody to imagine this being a $70 billion budget. All the water in this bottle, $70 billion. Now, with this, we're going to wipe out all those wait lists, all those people on disabilities, all those low-income, frail seniors who are trying to stay out of long-term care, which is much more expensive when it comes to Medicaid. And by the way, when you go into long-term care, it takes 100 days to burn out your personal savings, on average. Okay, so Medicaid kicks in. So here's the trick. This is why we bait you into thinking we're doing a great job, and instead we're screwing the cities, we're screwing everybody local and shifting the burden. Yeah. What is it? $70 billion. Right? Here's what we do. We say, oh, well, you know, these amendments, we've passed them all, there's less revenue. But we have to balance the budget. So we change the rules. Less people are eligible for things. Parks deteriorate. We close parks. We put more people on potentially waiting lists because we change the rules and eligibility. You're not going to hurt me, right? Okay. Well, if I know, I'm not going to ask. So here's what we do, and this is the best illustration. We're going to keep it at $70 billion. We're going to balance the budget. Here's the program. After those changes. Now, we come back and we say, oh, we balanced the budget, aren't you proud? But if you look, there's the fully funded budget with all those people being helped. Here's the trick. And you're being led around the nose if you believe what we say, and this is what's occurring. And if you look at your quality of life over the last 15 years, where's it gone? Down. It's really simple, but that's the trick, and nobody gets that. So I wanted to illustrate it a little different. It's a little better than the napkin, I think. Now I'm going to finish my water. Thank you.
Okay, Bill, pull up Amendment 12. Appointment of student body president. Okay, do you remember that pregnant pig amendment a few years back? All right, and you scratched your head. Did you find anybody that will speak for or against this? Because it's just sort of innocuous. Should it even be an amendment? Do you think it's... Oh, I spoke too soon. Oh, boy. I should have.
And the reason I had to jump up is because I actually voted against this every stop until I actually reached the floor for a very specific reason. I want you to understand the nature of your tax dollars being wasted by folks in Tallahassee. This is a prime example. You know, when you put stuff on a ballot, the printing costs, the ink, all that stuff is money you're spending, right? So when they add language to the ballot for you to vote on for unnecessary amendments like this, that's the problem, all right? And let me explain why this is the problem. Under the Constitution of the state of Florida, the Florida Student Association, sounds pretty simple, right? Florida Student Association, which is a collection of all the state university presidents, are able to appoint the president that is elected as the head of the Florida Student Association to the Board of Governors. All right, so all 11 state universities pay a fee to join this organization called the Florida Student Association. From that elected group, the only people that can be chosen are the 11 student body presidents. From that, they pick a president, and that president gets appointed to the Board of Governors for a year. One school, Florida State University, said we don't want to pay the fee anymore to join the organization, but we still want the same rights and privileges to possibly appoint our SGA president to the Board of Governors. One school. Now, the reason I say this one school is important is because when you look at the state legislature demographically, two schools dominate the state legislature. University of Florida and Florida State University. Disproportionately. So schools like New College, Florida Gulf Coast, University of West Florida, University of South Florida, University of Central Florida, it's hard for them to compete because there's so many alumnus for those two schools voting. An example being, Florida State didn't ask for a medical school, but got one. Let me explain that to you again, in case you missed it, because it was your tax dollars at work. Florida State said, we're good. We don't need a medical school program. And then all of a sudden, they got an $800 million allocation for medical school. This was years ago. This was under Speaker Thrasher, who's now a state senator. This year, the University of South Florida said we have a campus in Lakeland, and we're fine with it. Then the Lakeland legislature said, no, we need to create a new university that has how many students? This many students. So now we have a 12th state university under the budget that just passed this past year with no students that you're paying for the lights, you're paying for the upkeep, you're paying for all of that because they took it away from the University of South Florida to create Florida Polytechnic University. So again, this is one of those things where it's like, why are you doing this? Florida State said we don't want to buy into FSA, so we need a law now because we want our SGA president to be able to be appointed on some occasion. So now they're creating something called the Council of Student Government Presidents. That's what FSA was. It was a Council of Student Government Presidents. But this simply allows all of those schools that were paying FSA, which is their lobbying group and does all these things and puts together programming for them, allows all 11 state universities, now 12, to just opt out of FSA to create a brand new council to do the exact same thing that the previous council was doing.
So who's benefiting from this? The lobbyists?
FSU said we don't want to. We don't want. We don't want to pay.
All right, so this is really a Knowles problem, is what you're saying.
It's really it was really a Knowles problem. Now it's everyone's problem because it's appearing on your ballot unnecessarily.
What was the fee that they were paying? How much was it?
It's like $700.
Oh.
And how much did it cost to do all this?
A lot more than $700. So, thank you. I just had to explain that to you because, again, it was frustrating.
All right, well, that actually wraps up the 12 amendments that we were going to talk about. And we have some questions here. What's our last screen? Oh, this is the CAN legislative agenda, but we're going to get back to that. We can just go to our last. We're going to go to our last screen, which is our thank you. Let's go to our last screen. But I'm actually going to ask my partner, Lee Katzman, to ask some of these questions.
Good luck. I'll do my best.
Okay.
Thank you. This was Senator Sexton.
She left. Yes, trying to leave. She thank you, jokes on limousine.
All right.
Did you anybody appreciate those jokes about limousine?
No.
No. Well, you see the negative that you asked me about.
You joke about that stuff.
Okay, should we go get this?
Representative Sands.
Representative Sands. Okay. This is from gentleman in the audience, and he says, convoluted wording and amendments. Are fees another word for selective taxes?
Okay, convoluted words. I call that Tallahassee speak. Okay, where yes means no, no means yes, up means down, etc. You get it. Are fees another word for taxes? Well, let's go to the expert, Grover Norquist. Okay, and he is a big Republican who says that he wants to make government so small that he could put it in a bathtub and drown government. And he said that he puts out something where people have to write on there a pledge that they will not agree to any new taxes. So they will never vote for a tax. But we've got a lot of people in the legislature who signed that silly pledge, and they can't vote for a tax. So they say, gee, how can we not vote for a tax and yet vote for a tax? Simply by calling it a fee. You got it. That's the answer. Yes.
Thank you very much. Here's one that I promise you we didn't write. It's to anyone on the table, on the dais. Aside from CAN, how destructive to the legislative process are lobbyists? Go ahead, please.
800%.
See, I can take that question because I'm leaving the legislature in just a few weeks. But let me share my experience with you about lobbyists, and let's be very realistic, okay? When you come into the legislature on day one, they expect you to know about agriculture, about business development, about education, about insurance, and about 20 other subjects, none of which you have a clue about. Highways, road building, everything. The bottom line is that lobbyists are businessmen. They get paid by their clients to represent the interests of their clients, and that's fine, you have to understand it. But what actually does happen is that the lobbyists come to you advocating for a specific position on an interest, of an interest, but you have the obligation to ask them, well, what is the other side of the coin? And they are obligated to give you both the pro and the con, honestly, of those issues. So to that extent, lobbyists serve a very valuable function. Of course, they're easy to pick on because they do make lots of money, and they're very visible. So they get a bad rap very often. For my 8 years in the legislature, I was only led down a wrong path once by a lobbyist. I didn't speak to him for the next 7 years. So they understand, they better give it to you straight, because ultimately you're going to find out. And if they've stuck it to you once, shame on them. If you give them an opportunity to do it to you again, shame on you. So it's really what you make of it in the legislature. I just give you my personal opinion.
This question is for Representative Packard. Why not just pass a law for these issues and not a constitutional amendment?
I'm going to follow up on Franklin's point. And Dwight, and a number of other folks actually, we get together 60 days out of the year. More than 50% of the things we do are caused by the fact that people make campaign contributions. There's no secret. There's tons of cash being put into soft money type committees. There's tons of cash, hard money, given to candidates like me. And for instance, you look at the stand your ground law. There was no reason to pass that. Nobody was really asking for it, but it's an annual gift. And so things that make sense in Tallahassee don't often get discussed. Things that shouldn't probably be discussed sometimes get attention because of special interests. Also, one other thing, there are a lot of special interests that kind of get thrown into that bad category. But when you look at the special interests that we deal with, whether it be oil companies or gambling type situations, they have a ton of cash. There's also special interests that don't have a ton of cash. Unfortunately, they don't always have the attention of legislators because of that. And I'm talking about large groups. 23% of the state is 60 years or older. But you don't hear the word elder or seniors on the legislative floor. You don't hear that there's 100,000 people that have been on wait lists, or 20,000 people, as I said earlier, with disabilities who've waited as long as 11 years. You don't hear about the parents of those people who are going to die in the next 10 to 20 years, who are trying to contemplate and figure out a plan for their children who can't survive on their own. The problem is, there's tons of cash in this process, tons, and it's a double-edged sword. If you're willing to take the cash, you also have to be willing to say no. There's a word that I learned a couple of years ago about somebody else in the legislature, and they described this person as transactional. Not as a representative, but transactional. And I never heard that applied to a human being. But when you get people elected to the legislature who are more concerned about their personal growth and their ambition, and who aren't concentrating on the people who got them to the dance, then you have to do what Maria said, and that is find out who's hitting the wrong button and not supporting you. Nobody in this room supported increased fees on license tags or driver's license fees. That's why I vote against the budget. But you'll hear different things in the commercials. It's a game that you're being brought into, and you have to be actually smarter to elect people who are going to say no, and elect people who are actually going to represent you. And I don't mean to put the full responsibility on you, but I can tell you, there are people who will take advantage of you every single time unless you call them out and elect people. One other thing, two other things. Never vote for anybody that sends you something about themselves. Advertising paid for and approved by Mark Halford shouldn't be something you think, oh wow, nice guy. I'm not going to write anything bad about myself. That's not going to happen. And, you know, do your homework, do your research. There are people that actively vote against you and come home and play games and say they're not, when they do every single time. It's a long answer, but look, it's a money game, and you have to be aware of that.
Okay, this question is for Tim. I'm guessing this is for you, although it's addressed to construction lobbyists, so you might want to address that. Regarding Amendment 1, why would the legislature draft an amendment that is nothing more than political posturing? It is moot, cannot be enforced, and seems a divisive and bitter, useless waste of resources.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, first off, let me at least correct that. I am not a lobbyist. I'm a general contractor, small business owner in the community. I voluntarily chair a legislative committee for my industry. So let me just get that out there up front. Why would they propose an amendment to make a point to the federal government that we as Floridians cannot be bullied, that if we don't agree with something, listen, we're not going to just, I guess, sit down and take it, so to speak. So it's exactly it. As the young woman up front here said, states' rights versus federal government. So I think that's the biggest part of it, is they're just trying to make a point to the federal government that, you know, we're going to be heard.
Didn't the governor make that point already?
Yes, that went to the Supreme Court.
Yes, and that went to the Supreme Court. I'm sure this started though well before that decision. I'm sure this amendment started well before that Supreme Court decision.
Here's my question. Do you expect it to pass?
The amendment?
Yeah.
Personally, I think it will. I think there's enough people that were against the federal health care bill that it could pass.
Okay, thank you so much. Question on amendment number 8. Why should religious entities that are exempt from paying taxes be able to take more tax dollars when they do not pay into the funds? Aren't the religious institutions already receiving tax dollars, since the donors may qualify to deduct charitable contributions, thereby paying less income tax?
Well, I think it's a great question, and the question answers itself. I think one of the strange things that I find about this panel and all the other constitutional amendments, how many of these constitutional amendments are really about, oh my God, how are we going to lower taxes? How are we going to limit spending? How are we going to deal with the budget? How are we going to bring everything down? When what Amendment 8 does, if you look at it, is guarantee unlimited amounts of money to religious organizations with no oversight and no accountability. It's incredible that could be on the ballot in a time like this. It's a giveaway of government money with no written guarantees of accountability into the process.
Well, who's responsible for that?
Excuse me?
Who's responsible for putting that ballot on the...
Well, if you want to talk frankly about it, frankly, it goes back to Jeb Bush. The most powerful Republican politician, I think, in the state of Florida is Jeb Bush. Jeb fought this. In 1998, Jeb Bush was elected governor, in which vouchers, his solution to address problems in public education was to help people get out of public education and use tax dollars to fund them into private schools. Private schools is a political euphemism when 85–90% of private schools are church-related schools. In 2006, we were part of a lawsuit in which the Florida Supreme Court struck that down on the basis of the Florida Constitution. Jeb's response to that was not that we need to reshape the policy so that it conforms to the Constitution, but that we should eliminate the constitutional provision. So he went to the legislature. And in 2006, his proposal to remove what is now on the ballot was defeated in the Republican Senate by 1 vote. It was by a Republican-dominated state Senate. They rejected his attempt to put on the ballot a measure. There were other efforts through something called a Tax and Budget Reform Commission, and now finally it is on the ballot. A long dream of his education foundations, he and his assistants, to get this on the ballot. That's what's largely behind this. That, and I have to say, frankly, I think there is a disgusting amount of religious divisiveness that's coming out, and I don't want to contribute to that. So what I want to urge you to do is go to the Secretary of State's website and follow the money. See where the money that is supporting Amendment 8 is coming from, and you will understand what is behind Amendment 8.
Let me just follow up on what Howard said, because if we really want to get into the weeds, here's what you really need to know as well. In addition to everything that he said, which was accurate, there's another thing at work here. How are religious schools and vouchers, 80% of all the people getting vouchers currently go to religious schools, how is that currently being funded if you can't use public money? Through a loophole that allows certain corporations that, instead of paying their money to the public treasury, bypass the treasury with the taxes they owe and take that tax money and pay it to a not-for-profit organization that then takes their cut and gives it to the folks so they can send their kids to those religious schools. That's how it's being funded right now. Now, what is going to happen, because we have a governor that says, I want to attract business, and the way that I want to attract business is not by making better education, not by educating a workforce, but I want to lower taxes to 0 on corporations. Now this year he got to lower taxes somewhat on some corporations, but he wants to eliminate taxes altogether. Now if you eliminate taxes altogether, forget for a moment the fact that Florida, which is a no income tax state, would lose all that revenue. How do you fund religious schools if there's no more tax revenue from corporations coming in? Ergo, Amendment 8. Okay, that's another view of Amendment 8, and they're both accurate. They're both absolutely accurate and currently at work. Thank you.
Very briefly, I just want to add one thing. I want to step back and ask you to take a look at the big picture. The oldest constitutional value that we have in America, the oldest and most important, is the separation of church and state. If separation of church and state means anything, it means that you can't be forced to use your tax dollars to support somebody else's religion. People have a right to get a religious education for their children. They fund it from themselves, not from the state and not from taxpayers.
There are a lot of great questions. What we're going to do, we can't get to every question. We've been here for hours, although I do find it very interesting that I have 2 questions here for Senator Herodopoulos, who's not actually here today. So whoever's a friend of Senator Herodopoulos, perhaps we'll take his questions with. For the people who address their questions to actual panel members, we're going to make sure they get those questions and they can look at it. If nothing else, they see where your head's at with regard to some of these issues. All right. I personally want to thank you all for coming here. I want to thank Julie for telling me